Hello, welcome to the Comic Book Commentary. I'm Bo Leidig, and today we're going to be talking about Darker Image. It's a 4-issue miniseries that never made it further than just one issue. Let's zoom in and take a closer look. First issued in March of 1993, Darker Image was originally sold in a completely sealed poly bag that looked like this. Now, you may be wondering why they would come in these sealed poly bags, and it's because each issue was packaged with a trading card. 3 trading cards existed throughout, each one of the 3 characters who was featured in this book. Those characters being the Max, Bloodwolf, and Deathblow. You had to kind of hunt for them sometimes to get them, but they're not that hard to find, even 30 years later, because I have a copy of each one of these cards still in the bag. They'll look like this. Here we can see on the back the trading cards of Deathblow, Bloodwolf, and the Max. We also see an advertisement on the reverse cover for Wildcats the Trilogy featuring the artwork of Jay Lee. I should also point out that there were 2 separate variant covers for this book, one of them being the gold logo edition, which I unfortunately do not have a copy of. I'm not certain exactly what it looks like. I believe it was just the regular cover with a gold foil logo. And then there's also the platinum cover, which I do have. It looks like this. As we can see here, the front cover is basically identical, save for the fact that it is black and white, and the Darker Image logo is in silver foil, or I guess platinum foil, since this is the platinum cover. But it also does not have the price point printed on this. And I have to wonder if this was a way for retailers of the time to basically charge whatever they wanted for this book, which, given that it was the early 90s, might have been kind of outrageous. I'm not sure. I just picked this book up recently for about $20, so I don't know if that's the going rate, but I didn't think it was outrageous either. Here on the reverse inside cover, we see the credits for all 3 of the stories that are printed within Darker Image, starting with the Max, Sam Keith, story, art, Bill Messner, Loeb's, dialogue, Steve Oliff, colors, Jim Sinclair, finishes, Mike Heisler, letters, Bloodwolf, Rob Liefeld, story, art, Steve Oliff, Byron Talman, colors, Kurt Hathaway, lettering, and Deathblow, Brandon Choi, Jim Lee, co-creator, story, Jim Lee, story, art, Joe Chiodo, colors, Mike Heisler, letters, Wendy Fouts, color assistant. That was a mouthful. Getting right into it, we start off with the story of the Max. As I stated, this is an anthology comic that has 3 separate stories introducing these 3 new characters to the Image universe. The original concept was that Darker Image was going to run for 4 issues and introduce some of the more gritty characters into the universe. And given the nature of what a lot of the early Image books were, I'm kind of surprised that they would have made a special mini-series for it, as characters such as Spawn and Pit already existed, and both of those are kind of gritty comics. But we see here the Max in what would be known in the actual main series of the Max as the Outback, as Max refers to it, or as Pangea, as Mr. Gone refers to it. We see that the Max's costume isn't the finalized design that Sam Keith would settle on. This is kind of a proto-Max costume where we see a lot of shredded strings hanging off of it, and his quote-unquote gloves are not the same design that would be in the final product. Max is here on a desolate wasteland, just hanging out, talking about how the voices in his head have started to come back, which he enjoys because they help him focus, and talking about how his claws still feel wet. But then the Max is pondering is interrupted as he smells something terrible and dangerous, and it's none other than Rhett Karkin, which you may not know what that is, and I don't either, because if you've ever read The Maxx or know anything about The Maxx or watched the MTV animated series, you will know that The Maxx is a very, very weird character and story, and this is actually a terrific introduction to the comic as it starts off in the weird real fast. We see that Rhett Karkin is a member of the Mountain People, who are a god clan, according to Max's inner monologue. And we see that Rhett Karkin is a giant with a huge sledgehammer. And Max tries to hide from him, but unfortunately is discovered through sheer accident and or luck. And Rhett Karkin is not very happy that he's come across him. Here we see Max dodging a swing from Rhett Karkin's hammer, which the head of is supposedly made of the petrified heart of an air whale. None of this is explained during this, preview of what the Maxx would be, and a lot of it never gets explained. Again, the Maxx is super weird, and we see here that Max quickly starts to run through the plains trying to get away. Rhett Karkin giving chase, doing everything he can to kill him, and Max makes a beeline for this large stone fortress. He says he loves the adrenaline of running through the grass and the way it feels under his feet, and we see him quickly running, trying to escape. Here we see on the next page that Max leaps onto the side of the stone fortress, breaks through the wood that's barricading one of the windows, and unfortunately for him, this fortress is filled with lush jungle and the Jungle Queen, who, as he describes, is a she-devil, and she begins to slash at Max and stab him with this weird ice pick looking corn dog thing, and he begins to lose vision. And then we're teleported to New York City, where we see not the Jungle Queen, but Julia, who is a freelance social worker in the main comic. She's upset because Max has crashed through the roof of her apartment and has torn up the place, and she has actually sedated him. We see she has a syringe right here. And this is kind of the first inkling that we get to the fact that we don't know if Max is out of his mind and if the visions that he has really happened, or what his true mental state is. Julia believes that he's crazy, and she does want to help him as he is homeless, but she also doesn't know what his backstory is or why she feels so compelled to try and help him. She even mentions that she's at risk of being kicked out of her building if he keeps damaging the place. Here on the final page of the Max's story, we get this cool full-page image of Max. Again, his costume is very different. We notice it's almost robe-like what he's wearing. It's shredded, it's flared out all over the place. This, of course, seems more of, I guess, Max's envisionment of the way he sees himself in his own mind, in his unconscious state. All of these thought bubbles are Julia's inner monologue, where she tries to consider who he is, if he was maybe once a member of Youngblood or an amnesiac rock star, but she's very upset and does not want to get evicted from her apartment, but again, still doesn't know why she's so drawn to helping him. And I know if you're watching this and you don't know anything about the Maxx, you're probably thinking that this sounds super weird and it doesn't make sense. And you're correct, it doesn't. And we'll get into it because I do have the entire series of the Maxx, and it makes more sense as you read through the series. Not a lot more sense, but more sense than it does here. On the next page, we see another advertisement for the Pro Guard series of bags and boards that were produced by Wizard Magazine. Again, I've never seen these in the wild, and I am somewhat interested as to whether or not anyone watching may have purchased these at some point, and if they were any good. Here on the next page, we see an advertisement for Wildcats number 0. If you would like to know more about Wildcats number 0, check out my video on Wildcats number 0. And then we begin our story of Bloodwolf, who we see here flying through outer space on his rocket-powered motorcycle, headed towards Praxin 9, which is the 9th moon of Praxin. Apparently, the king of Praxin left all 9 moons split between all of his sons upon his death, which has caused unending strife and war between said sons. And Bloodwolf is on a quest for vengeance because some of the sons apparently insulted his grandmother, which he is not taking kindly to. So he intercepted a package delivery man who had clearance to get on to Praxin 9 and is going to use that guy's code to land and exact his revenge. I should also point out at this time that Bloodwolf is essentially Lobo. And I'm not being hyperbolic. It's really a lot like Lobo. Like oh my god, so much like Lobo. And that probably explains why Bloodwolf did the poorest out of the 3 characters introduced in this book. But it just goes back into the whole idea of Rob Liefeld kind of just copying a lot of characters that already existed and tweaking them just enough that he wouldn't get sued, but still just kind of making something that you could already buy somewhere else. And it's not really surprising that it didn't take off. On the next page here, we see that Bloodwolf lands and is getting off of his motorcycle to deliver the package. Oh, and speaking of Lobo, who is this? It's Lobo. Are you kidding me? He just put Lobo in the book and acted like no one was going to notice. And he's right here too. I shouldn't say he's acting like nobody was going to notice this. This is obviously deliberate, and it's done in a manner that is supposed to be joking, but I don't know, if your character is kind of a complete copy of Lobo and then you put Lobo in the book but don't name him or make light of the fact that's who it is, I don't know, it's just odd. It's an odd choice in writing and in storytelling. Bloodwolf then comes to the office of the brother who controls Praxin 9 with the package. He's just allowed to go right in by the guards at the door. We see here that his last name is Butts, but Director Butts is really quite busy and not too worried about the delivery boy who is already late until said delivery boy, aka Bloodwolf, pulls a gun on him and lets him know that he's about to pay for the crime of insulting Bloodwolf's grandmother. Here on the next page, we see an advertisement for Dooms 4, which I might have an issue of this. If I do and I find it, I'll make a video about it at some point. But we see here that Seymour, yes, that's right, his name is Seymour Butts. Okay, fine. Gets his head blown clean off by Bloodwolf, who's very happy and decides to deliver said package, as we can see here with the arrow, and quickly make haste to get away because the package is a bit of a calling card that he does not want to be anywhere near. And he also believes that he's only got about a minute until they catch on to the fact that he just murdered the leader of the entire planet. Unfortunately for Bloodwolf, he is quickly discovered and pointed out by none other than Cable from the X-Men. Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, yes, it's a Y instead of an X, but this is clearly Cable. And I get it, this book is not supposed to be serious. And that's fine. But I have a hard time believing that Marvel and DC were just going to let this kind of stuff fly with no repercussions whatsoever. Cable and Bloodwolf quickly start exchanging gunfire. Bloodwolf makes a run for it, trying to get back to the landing bay so that he can get to his motorcycle. Unfortunately, he is intercepted by a large group of gun-toting guards. Bloodwolf decides to engage and just kill all of them, so he quickly starts opening fire, and apparently all of these guards couldn't do anything to stop him. We see here on the next page that Bloodwolf was able to dispatch the guards who were trying to stop him and get to his motorcycle, but instead of getting away, he actually picks it up from the back end, because his motorcycle also apparently doubles as a giant laser pistol, which he quickly uses to kill all of the rest of the guards instantaneously, blasting all of the flesh away from their skeletons. And he finds this amusing, which admittedly, it's pretty amusing. And then he makes a quick getaway into space from Praxin 9. We see here that Bloodwolf is promptly making his getaway, getting further away from Praxin 9 as this package equals big trouble, and then it explodes and blows up literally the entire planet, to which he just laughs maniacally over. And that's the end of this story. I get that Bloodwolf is supposed to be a funny character, but I don't know, it's not a character that really resonated with me or many other people for that fact, because, it didn't last very long, but, maybe there were some people who really enjoyed it. I just wasn't one of them. Here on the next page, we see an advertisement for Youngblood and Bloodshot team-up comic. I don't believe I have any issues of this. It was probably either a one-shot or a mini-series. I'm not certain. If I do find it, I'll make a video on it at some point, but I don't know if it was published under Image or perhaps Valiant. There's no telling. Either way, I'd be a little bit interested to see what it was about, and if I come across it in a comic book store sometime, I'll probably pick it up. I can't believe it'd be more than a couple of bucks to buy that. And now we get to the final story in this anthology book, and it is a huge change in pace and tone from the previous two stories. The Max is very often lighthearted. It's also very odd, and you're never really certain entirely what's going on. Then you move on to Bloodwolf, which was just a fly by the seat of your pants, kind of goofball, super over-the-top action story. And now, with Deathblow, it's a very ultra gritty, grounded in reality type of story that is completely on a different level from the other two stories in this book. We see here at the beginning that there is a riverboat heading down a river in the jungle, and most of the dialogue that we see here is Deathblow's inner monologue. We see the captain of the boat, his name is Paulo, by the way, calling out, telling him, "Hey, gringo, you should come up here and get some sunlight." Deathblow just ignores him. He knows who the guy is. He's undercover as we see him here in this suit with a hat, and he starts unpacking and getting ready for his mission. And we see him putting on the face paint, getting his guns loaded and ready. And then the boat, as it sails down the river, gets to the dock right about the time that the sun is going down. Paulo heads down under deck to see what's keeping Deathblow, to tell him that it's time to go. And then he realizes that the guy he was carrying in this boat isn't exactly who he thought he was. Here on the next page, we get this really cool 2-page image of Deathblow locked, loaded, fully geared up, ready for the mission that he's heading out to. And Paulo is shocked. Now, the reason he went with Paulo is that Paulo is somewhat of a nefarious character. He makes most of his money by ferrying drug lords up and down the river to avoid capture, but he'll also occasionally take jobs for undercover agents or special ops people such as Deathblow, kind of playing both sides, and Deathblow kind of informs him that this is the end of the line for him. Apollo quickly begs him to, spare his life. He's got information for him, but Deathblow, of course, is having none of it as he pulls out the pistol and hits him with 2 to the chest, dumping his body into the river. Here on the next page, we are transported to Washington, D.C., where we are introduced to Lieutenant Junior Grade J.L. Conrad. Conrad is being recruited to go on a mission to hunt down Michael Cray, who is Deathblow. The reason being is Deathblow has gone rogue and is on a mission to hunt down and kill General Ortega in Costa Mesa. Conrad doesn't really understand why this is happening and why Deathblow has decided to go out of his way to kill this general. He's informed that it's because Deathblow wants to get revenge because Ortega killed one of his partners, but Conrad still thinks this is odd because the partner that they're speaking of died in 89. It's now 93. It's 4 years later. Why wait until now? And then Conrad is informed that it's because Deathblow is dying, which does put him off a bit, as Deathblow is a former team member of his in SEAL Team 7, which also did involve some other prominent Image characters and did have its own short-lived comic book series as well, which I have a few issues of and we'll get into eventually. On the next page, we see an advertisement for the Valiant Image crossover event, Deathmate. I do have every issue of Deathmate, and at some point I will make some videos on Deathmate. On the next page, Conrad is told that during his last physical examination, Deathblow was informed that he had terminal cancer and an inoperable brain tumor, which they believe set him on a quest to avenge this fallen partner and go out with a bang on his own terms. They then instruct Conrad that he is to hunt down, find Deathblow, and kill him, which Conrad questions for a moment, but they inform him that if it's a problem, that he needs to step away. He tells them that it's not a problem and that he'll do his best, and they tell him that no, he'll succeed, which he promptly tells them is what he meant. On the next page, we are teleported to the back of the Special Forces helicopter, which is transporting Conrad and his team into the jungles of Costa Mesa, where they're to hunt down Deathblow. Conrad makes note of the fact that he's never worked with any of the other men on this mission before, but they're all super high level in their field, which he finds surprising that they would put men at such a high level in a team to take down one guy, but does note that Deathblow is probably one of the best soldiers in the entire American military, so it may not be as gross overkill as he thought. He does also go into a long inner monologue of how none of this really seems to make sense, and he doesn't understand why simply getting a terminal cancer diagnosis would push Deathblow over the edge and set him on a quest for vengeance as his final act. It doesn't really seem to mesh with what he knows of the man and his personality. But in the meantime, the helicopter drops them off in the middle of the jungle, where they quickly find Deathblow's tracks and begin to chase him down. But he does have a roughly 30-kilometer head start, so they've got to be on the move. We're then teleported back to Washington, D.C., where the two men we saw earlier are talking amongst themselves, trying to figure out if there's anything unique going on that they need to be worried about. They mention the green fin head in Chicago, aka Savage Dragon, and how they wish they had gotten to him before the Chicago Police Department did because he would have been a valuable asset. They also talk about a superpowered being beating up a biker gang in New York City. This, of course, is Pit. If you'd like to know more about Pit, check out my video on Pit number 1. As they're just about to talk about possibly deploying a team to New York to investigate, they quickly get a transmission that the team has been dropped off in Costa Mesa. And that's where we start to find that there's a little bit of maybe double dealing going on, because we hear the two of them talking about how they want Ortega dead, but they also need plausible deniability. So we're now left to wonder whether or not the story of Deathblow having terminal cancer is true, and also wondering if he was sent on this mission without being given all the information involved. But of course, this is all to be continued in Deathblow number 1. Here on the next page, we get this really cool advertisement for Stormwatch. If you'd like to know more about Stormwatch, check out my video on Stormwatch number 0. And on the reverse inside cover, we get an advertisement for the line of Wildcats trading cards from Topps that will be coming out in May of 1993. I don't have any of these trading cards, and I don't know if I've ever even come across them. I'm not sure if they were successful or not, though Wildcats was one of the more successful Wildstorm properties, so it's possible that it was. If I ever came across them, I'd probably be tempted to buy a few. And that was Darker Image number 1. As I stated before, this was originally supposed to be a 4-issue miniseries, and they only ever printed up this one issue, which, honestly, looking back at it now, doesn't really surprise me. This was a project that, in theory, is kind of cool, but it's not really necessary. I mean, they already planned on making ongoing series, or at least mini-series of all these characters. So to create a book where you have short introductory stories to them just seems redundant in a way. It just seems like a huge waste of time and money, especially time for the creators. With as much as these guys had going on, you know, Sam Keith was only working on the Max, but Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld both had their plates really full in 93. And the amount of, you know, extra time they had to put in to creating this book just seems like it could have been spent better in other places. But at any rate, if you enjoyed Darker Image and you enjoyed today's video, please like, subscribe, comment. It's a fun book, but again, it just seems totally unnecessary in the grand scheme of things. At any rate, thanks for watching. Have a great day.